want to play a great chess game like Mikhail Tal play, sacrificing your pieces, demolish your opponent, you can use a missile on a chessboard, not a real missile. If you have one, I'm not going to talk about that. The gambit today we are going to explore is ICBM Intercontinental Ballistic Missile Gambit, or you can say Tennyson Gambit, named after an American player, Otto Tennyson. I give you some information if you don't know. That's what you get in extra when you watch my videos. You started the game with e4 and your opponent choose to play Scandinavian. If you rated less than 1500, you are going to see a lot of Scandinavian, but the player above more than 1500 doesn't play Scandinavian too much. That's why going into this line is better than you play the move knight to f3 first. And now it's called the reti opening, and your opponent can choose to play the move d5. Majority of the players choose to play d5. If they play e5, you can just change your opening into some of like different types of opening you have. But if they play d5, you just give them a free pawn with e4. This is the position you need to get a missile gambit, ICBM gambit, or you can say Tennyson Gambit. If you start the game with e4 and they play Scandinavian, you just develop the knight to f3, just gambiting a pawn. So this is the initial position you need to get. Majority of the players just take, because it's just completely a free pawn. And after they take, you just go with knight to g5, attacking the pawn. If your opponent kick your knight, you just take this pawn. And if they try to protect this pawn with knight, you give another free pawn. And if they take this pawn as well, you take with the bishop. And now this knight and a bishop looking at the same pawn. Your opponent see this knight is not great here, they want to kick. But there is a idea. You never want to go back with this knight. You sacrifice the knight. Knight take f7. It's a brilliant move. King can take this, and if king takes, you go with bishop to g6 check, and now you open up a discovery attack on a queen, and the king is under attack. So the king and the queen both are under attack. If queen die, the game continue, but if king die, the game end. That's why king has to take the bishop. And if they take the bishop, you just take the queen, and now you're just up a queen. And if you can't win this position, maybe you doesn't win any position. Now the common mistake players make here is just to they play after e5 they see a free bishop and grab it. However, this is a blunder because you just hung b4 check, and you can block with a pawn threatening to take. Your opponent can sack the bishop because that is you're going to lose this bishop, and then they take your queen. And this is a looking like a drawish position, but this is not you want, because you are just a queen, so why you want to give up your queen? So that's why just don't take the bishop. Instead you can take this free pawn. Now bishop to b4 check doesn't make so much sense, because you just skip this bishop, or maybe you can offer a trade, because you are just up a material, trade everything, you are going to win the end game. Now let's talk about some different lines you can get. So after pawn take pawn and knight goes to the f6, not f6, g5, your opponent may kick, but you just take. And if they try to protect with the knight, the same line I just show you. And what if they protect with the bishop? Develop the knight. Why are you developing your knight? Because if they protect with the knight, now you give them this free pawn. It's look like free. And after they take, you doesn't take with the bishop, you doesn't take with the pawn, because in the end game you are going to have a isolated queen pawn that is not good for you. So you just play the move queen to f3, attacking the bishop and also threatening this pawn. Only move that saves both of them is queen to c8. Protect the pawn and also protect the bishop. Now you doesn't have to take this way, you just take with the bishop and you just trade the bishop. Another line you can get is after pawn take pawn and knight goes to the g5, after knight to f6 and you give them a free pawn, maybe they can play this move h6 first before taking the pawn. So in this position you just take this pawn. What after this and a queen trade, and it is a draw position. Your opponent can play the move bishop to g4. This is also a great line. This is a great line. This is you going to get often because this is considered a great line by the computer player. If player know what they are doing, they are not going to lose pretty well. So you have to just to play the queen to d2, and after pawn take pawn you have to take with the bishop, and the idea is simple. They cannot kick the knight. Here they have to play the move knight to c6 to protect the queen, or maybe to e6. That is also makes sense. But the bishop is doing nothing on this diagonal. You just castle, develop your pieces. Now you have a great position, fight for this. After this position and they take, you can get this knight to c6. Now sacrificing a knight and a bishop doesn't work because queen take queen and knight can take your queen. So what you do, you doesn't come back with the knight until they kick. You just develop your knight, and if they also develop, you just castle your king, and if they kick, you just come back. And this position is good for white. This position is good for white because you just get a rapid development for a pawn, and you can just centralize your rooks, play this game. You're going to have a great game. Let's see if they didn't take the pawn on e4. Instead they just play the move c6, and now it's a carapan. So what you have to do, maybe you can take and go into carapan exchange variation. You can go advanced variation. There are multiple lines, and if they play the move e6 and goes into a French defense, now you can play exchange French. Advanced French is also supported by the computer. Like this is just a French defense advanced variation. You can also play this. So there are multiple lines that just open from this one opening, and chess is no longer a boring if you want to play like this. I hope you learned something today. If you learned, you can subscribe to the channel if you want. I'm going to meet you in the very next video. Until then, goodbye.